days after the bill's passed.
Yeah.
So I have very intentionally thought and come up with some ideas to make sure that I stay connected to you back here. And there's a few ways I'm going to do it. One is, if you write me a letter, if it's on Obamacare, you're going to get some sort of standard text that comes back. But I'm going to make sure that somebody in my staff and myself includes some sentence or paragraph, something up front that knows that we read your letter, we heard what you had to say, and we're answering you back. And if it's off the wall, something that, hey, my dog's got athlete's foot, I want to be able to pass to get some help with that. We'll definitely answer you on that one, right? It'll be handwritten, probably. So, anyways, I want to make sure that you know that you're heard, and I want to make sure I hear you. And we'll have staff meetings that talk about the constituency mail and where we can help and what we can do as our role as your congressman. Another thing that I want to do is I want to have something I call constituent Fridays. And I understand that we have Fridays off in Congress. I'm not sure yet. I'm not there. I'll figure it out when I get there. But assuming that that information is right, that I have Fridays off, instead of taking the 5-6 hours to fly home plus all the driving and such, I'm going to have that the TV in the 2 different offices. What do you call it? Teleconferencing. Yeah, have a TV in my office here, a nice big screen TV, and one in my office in DC, to where you and I can talk through the TV, and it's maybe you don't get to smell my coffee breath as we sit across from each other, but we still talk face to face. I hear your concerns, you hear me. And I'd like to do that on most Fridays when I can, as much as possible. And then when I do come home, and I'll come home as much as we can, we're going to keep our house in Nashville. The kids have made that clear. So, and one of the reasons, because I think there's special foods run over like weekends, football, and daughters have princess. Oh yeah, so we're going to keep our house here. And as much as I come back, I'm going to do town halls again. I love the town hall format. I love coming and talking to you and having you ask me questions. It is my favorite way of interacting on the campaign trail, and I expect it to be my favorite way to interact with my constituents when I'm your congressman. So I am very cognizant of that potential, and I'm already now taking steps to not fall into that trap. Oh, I know I'll have to learn how to work with the work. And I expect to be on the bottom rung. As a squadron commander, I am on the bottom rung of upper management. But I'm at least in upper management. I'm at least at the table. I at least get to say something and fight and do it. So even as a freshman congressman, I'll be able to do it. And one thing as a squadron commander I've learned how to do is win small victories, lose more than win, but win small victories and then build on those victories for bigger and bigger things than you can expect. Okay, you were second. Santorum. Go ahead and finish. I might have cut you off.
No, you heard it. Santorum being out, how is that going to help you in this race?
Yeah, I actually thought that with Santorum in through our primary, that it was going to help the Republican side in turnout. Because Democrats were going to stay home because their man's going to win no matter what. But the Republicans, there was a Romney-Santorum thing. So now I think it's going to kind of go back to the same. I don't really have a strategic thought on one way or the other if Santorum dropping out is going to help me. What it will do, though, is that I think there is some coattails with the presidency. If Mitt Romney, assuming Mitt Romney is our candidate, which is a pretty good assumption now, if he is doing good things and being a strong leader and strong candidate, I think that'll have coattails down the ticket. Unfortunately, Meg Whitman was not a strong candidate for us in several areas, and it hurt a lot of us down the ticket. And if Romney can be good, he'll help. If he's not, it'll hurt. And so Santorum dropping out really sets it up to whether Romney is good or not is going to help or not. One of the things that I'm doing very diligently and very working hard is that I'm becoming my own candidate, and you may vote for Obama and me when we're talking to candidate states and Democrats, because you still may be loyal to your president over there, but you like a lot of the things that I'm saying you want me to represent.
Let me focus that question a little bit more. Assuming you're a better cross-candidate, a cross-party candidate, because you come from an area that has more Democrats in it than Republicans, do you think that's going to help you against a Kim Van who comes from an area that is so highly Republican where the turnout may be lower for her?
Yeah, you know, like I said, I'm not gonna say a negative thing about Kim Van.
Oh, and I'm not either, I apologize.
That's my own,
Okay.
that's my shtick. Because I don't want to. And if for some reason I don't win, I do want to. But when you talk about Kim Van and me, and why I think I'm a better candidate, one, it's my experience. Through the military, fighting, all that kind of good stuff, combat experience. Let me give you one kind of fun example. I love this example. And it just happened. We're in this debate with John Garamendi. I talked about, you know, the question was a balanced approach to balancing our budget, taxes and cutting spending. And I gave an answer about growing jobs, like I told you, and cutting spending. John Garamendi stands up and says, where are you going to cut? Social Security, social services, you know, like, oh, you're such a horrible person for cutting government spending. Where would you possibly cut? The military? Would you cut there? I'm being dramatic.
Just like that.
And, okay, I've got my list of things I'm going to cut. I stand up. How about the $3 million we gave to UC Irvine for kids to play video games? Oh, is that not enough to spend? How about the $175 million in the VA? Oh, I am a vet. Oh, I'm going to cut VA spending. They spent it on buildings that weren't being used, including a pink octagon monkey house down out in Dayton, Ohio. Let's cut that out. Is that not enough for you? Well, then let's cut all $20 billion we spend on unused buildings across the federal government. Oh, that's not enough cutting for you. How about the $100 billion that we waste in Medicare every year to fraud and waste and abuse? How about that? There is plenty of places to cut. So I kind of went off there, and you get my point. But that's what I'm saying. Garamendi says one thing, and I come back, bang, here's how we do it. Here's some real solutions. And I know how to answer these questions. I've been in battles, whether it's been in the military, or whether it's been real battles, political battles before. I can face the big boys and girls. I can answer the questions, stand up for my solutions, and give specifics to where the people in the audience, the crossover voters, will know that this is somebody that they can trust and vote in. Another thing about why I will win the primary is because I think I will win some declining states and Democrats crossing over, because they like what they hear in terms of some of my solutions. But there's a couple of things in my background we have to understand that I didn't really talk about specifically. One, I grew up on a welfare. I have truly lived the American dream, coming from nothing and being where I'm at right now. I mean, I certainly have a lot of ways to go, but I'm comfortable. We live a good life. I grew up on welfare, so I understand that part of society. And I'm not, you know, a rich white Republican. I've got two of them. White Republican, you know. I understand the beginnings and some of the suffering that we go through in this life. And I'm not against welfare, but I see it as an investment in our people in their times of need so that they get back on their feet, like I have, and then contribute to society. And I pay back that investment many, many times over again. That's what welfare's for, and people like to hear that, and they like to see somebody that's done it. Another thing is, I'm a union member. We were talking about anti-union, right? I'm a union member as an airline pilot. I'm not necessarily anti-union. Like I said in the debate the other night in front of my congressman, the first thing you need to be when you're pro-union is pro-job. So I break down a lot of that partisan barrier. I get rid of the, oh, you're a Republican, you're a bad guy. And we're able to talk as Americans. We're able to talk about solutions. And I have had more than one time where the Democrats trying to shut the door in my face or walk away. And I mentioned some of these things that I've done in my life and I've gone through. And by the end of the conversation, which isn't that long, they're supporters. They're signing my petition. They're saying I'm going to vote for you. I've got SCIU folks that have endorsed me, put my sign in their lawn, and say they like what they're hearing. So when you are...
Did that include Andy Stern?
No.
Labor management, the top dog.
It's different.
We'll have some discussions and disagreements, but when you talk about normal people at this level, because I am that normal person with extraordinary experiences, we see eye to eye on most things, and certainly enough to win their vote. You're next. Yeah, I'll get to you.
Rick, thank you for being here. You started your meeting tonight with the echo of this room. And I heard you clear tonight. You said that you would not become the echo in Congress. In other words, congressmen who have been there for so long keep listening to themselves and start believing the same old rhetoric. The problem that we face, I think, in our country is both domestic and international. I I think we have a real struggle, and I think that internationally we have major problems. The federal government, Obama, and Panetta is cutting back the military and all branches and services, and the number of troops that we have, the amount of money that's being spent on modernization of vehicles, aircraft, and ships and so on. And certainly there is fraud, waste, and abuse in all levels of government, including the military. And I appreciate you being a squadron commander that you was able to deal with a $20 million budget and help solve some of those problems. On the domestic front, our cities are decaying, our counties are decaying, but the entitlement process that's at the federal government level coming through the state government and washing that money into local government is nothing but a fraud, waste, and abuse in many ways, because so much money gets trickled off so that there's very little back to the people who it's supposed to serve. So there's got to be a way to stop the so-called entitlement mentality that exists in Congress. There's got to be a way to put money, if you will, help communities understand and create laws that begin to deal with the issues of the way the attorneys are handling defense issues, the defense issues of people with too much crime. The problem we're facing right now in California is the release of prisoners out on the streets. And the recidivism that we have in this state is huge. There's not a solution right now. And I'm hoping that as a leader, that Congress not only talks to themselves, but they talk at the local level as well. It reminds me, and I'll be quiet because I think I've got 2 or 3 minutes in the public, and the reason I say this, I was at Congressman Thompson's meeting a little over a year ago, so when Obamacare was just released. It was touted as a meeting that he would listen to the people. It was an hour meeting. He spoke for 55 minutes, and there was 5 minutes left over for you and I. It was incredible to me because I asked questions like, did you read the bill? Couldn't get a straight answer. His staff promised that they would provide a response. Never got a response. There's an incredulous attitude that exists in Congress today. And I don't care either, and I like what you're saying. Whether you're Republican or Democrat or independent, it really doesn't matter. What you really have to be as an American is in tune with the reality of what exists today on our streets and in our homes. And the people today in our homes today are really worried. The economy is in such straits today that it's going to be a very difficult time for people to get back to where we were even 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And I have to say, as an American too, like yourself, I spent 32 years in the military. I spent 32 years serving my citizens as well in local government. And what I found is that people don't get listened to. Too many people are absent, and we have missing in action of regular common folk to come up and say what they really need to say. We trust too much, and that's the problem. We need to start taking a little bit of it back, get to our freedom curve, and have less government and more people involved in it, because after all, it is representative government, and we ask that you listen to us even when you get into the echo chambers of Congress. Thank you.
Absolutely, and that's one thing I will do. You know, again, back to those town halls, to listen. And there was a couple of things I wanted to touch on in your answer. Let me back up to the spending stuff. When you are borrowing $1 trillion a year, when you are so overspent, when you're running so far amok in the way you're running your government, it gives you very little wiggle room to do the things you need to do. When you talk about infrastructure and cities decaying, we should be spending extra money there, but we can't because all our money is being used up to borrow for things that are already in place. And so you have very little ability to plus up when it's needed. And so if we can get our budget under control, start paying down that debt when there are needs in society that government should address, infrastructure one of them, we have the ability to do it. On the military side, we can cut military spending. I can do it in my squadron today. If you did, and here's my idea on that. Again, a solid solution. The Constitution right now allows for a 2-year budget in the military. You know, all our spending is yearly. You know, you can't spend a September 30th dollar on October 1st. It's against the law. In the Constitution right now it says do not outlay any longer than 2 years for military spending. It's there. Put in a 2-year spending bill. Still divided up by fiscal years. But as I come to the end of a fiscal year, like we do all the time in September, instead of my boss telling me, spend all your money,
Or we're gonna lose it. Yeah.
or we're gonna lose it, and so I'm out trying to find ways to spend money that I don't need to spend.
Zero-based budgeting.
I've talked about that too, I'm on YouTube talking about that. But you give me the ability to carry those dollars into fiscal 13. I spend my $13 first, and then if I need my $12, they're there. And sometimes, like this year, I have 3 huge exercises, plus a huge inspection. You know, this year is a lot more demanding on my assets than last year was. I would need some extra dollars this year, and I'm begging for money because I've got all these demands. I could have, but I spent some money last year that I didn't need to spend. I could use it this year. So I go through my $13 and I dip into 12 if I need to. Now, if I get to the end of 13 and I didn't use all my money, then the $12 go back into the treasury. And there's no fear of losing my $14 because we're looking at 13. And the zero-based budgeting is something too. I can define my budget every year and say how much I need and justify that every year and say, give me this much. And that's another way of getting through it. But on the military side, we could say, I could save you 5% of my 18+ million, nearly $20 trillion right now, if you gave me that flexibility. Now, next year I might use it, but this year I probably would not. Anyway, so that goes to military spending. Now, if we make that successful, which I think we can, and we teach fiscal responsibility, we inject into the culture of our officers, which is very easy to do. You make a line on the OPR, or Officer Performance Report. How well did you spend the taxpayers' dollars? You know, we did it with fitness a few years ago. Are you in shape? Yes or no? If it's no, find a civilian job. If it's yes, keep going. How well did you spend taxpayers' dollars? And you make that a part of our culture. Now, we make that a successful program. I think it's successful in 2 or 3 years once you see it. And now we use it as a template for the rest of civilian government. Because they play the same games. They play the same spend the money or we'll lose it kind of thing. Another point on what you said, accountability. Congressmen and women pass laws, appropriations, and then they let it go. And maybe they hear about it later in some 2020 report that says how their dollars are being used. Can you say GSA? Right? You're familiar with the incredible waste of your tax dollars, your money, for that Las Vegas thing? That would never make it past my boss if I wanted to do something like that. If I tried, I mean, I could try. I mean, it's bad enough. We have training that we do, and I want to go to it doesn't matter what location I go to. Flying airplanes is flying airplanes, and going to a different airport is fun. But there's, you know, if I'm going to go to El Maguaro, New Mexico, out in the middle of the desert, or St. Croix, it doesn't matter. I get the same training, and it doesn't cost you any more. But I personally would rather go to St. Croix, so I send my folks to St. Croix, right? It's not an abuse of the system. It's just personal preference. But when I go someplace that's going to cost a little more money, my boss questions me, why are you going there? Hey, what about, getting maintenance folks down there to fix you? You know, my boss is on it right now. And I'm trying to justify it. Well, sir, and I have had things turned off that even this fiscal conservative that's looking after your money every day has been questioned. How in the world did that $800,000 conference get approved? How in the world did somebody sign off on $3 million to use the Irvine for kids to play video games? It's some study, right? It's the culture, exactly. And so accountability starts with Congress. I think as Congress passes laws, they have to follow through and make sure that the bureaucrats don't get out of control and let things go farther than they intended. But it takes a congressman that's going to put the extra effort in to make sure that when he passes an appropriation that's being spent right. And if he's suspicious that it's not, you start a congressional inquiry, and yeah, you start getting after people's jobs if they're doing something wrong. And listening, I'll get to you next. He had a big, long question. And listening to the people, again, is a principle of mine. I have to be able to do that. I know I don't have all the answers. I know everything's going on in this brain. And as an aircraft commander, I always reach out to my crew to hear some other ideas. As a squadron commander, I have staff meetings where constituents, my local government, the same way. I do have some ideas that I will charge hard on, but I'm not above listening to other people because I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. I can learn as I go forward, and accountability is key to that. So I hope I addressed most of what you were saying there. Did I leave anything out?
Well, we talked a little bit about foreign and domestic policy. And there wasn't a lot of conversation with regard to the stress we face as a country.
In terms of,
Foreign policy, the threats that we have against our country,
oh yeah.
and domestic.
You have to have a strong defense, and you have to have a strong diplomatic cord. You can't have an apology tour. You can't, I said this in the debate, and I have to be careful because never misunderstand me. I'm not questioning the authority of my commander-in-chief as a sitting lieutenant colonel. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a mentality when you say to a head of state that wait till after the election, I'll have more flexibility. My attitude would be is if I'm negotiating the best interests of Americans, then I should be gaining support going into an election. And worried about that and trying to wait till after, shows me that we're not thinking about strong diplomacy out there in terms of American interests. So there's a lot of threats out there. Strong national defense. We don't need to cut any more soldiers, any more capabilities. We can save some money by cutting waste. But we have to have strong national defense. My attitude as somebody who has been to war for the last 10 years, my attitude is you need a defense that if there is a problem, I'm the last guy that wants to go, but I'm the first guy that will raise my hand to go. My attitude is if there's a problem, we need a military that can clean up as quickly as possible. Overwhelming force, not a fair fight in any stretch of the imagination. Go in, kick butt, and get out, and that saves lives in the long run. So if that's addressing maybe your concern there, yes, strong national defense. When you have strong national defense, you can have strong diplomatic negotiations. When you're in the driver's seat and you have more cards than the other guy does, you can do a lot better. So, yes, sir.
Well, just to tack on to that, I have another question as well. So in essence, you're saying we're not using overwhelming force in Afghanistan at this point, it's time to get out?
Yeah, it is so tough. Afghanistan is so tough. I thought Don Rumsfeld was going to be an excellent Secretary of Defense when he first came in because I thought he was going to bring some of that business acumen and get rid of some of the waste that we had. I was looking forward to it. Then we went to war. And I actually had this impression as a middle guy, major, that we were running the war on the cheap. And I didn't like the way it was being done. And so I went and talked to a few of the higher management folks. And my boss, the one fellow, said, yeah, I spent a year studying how Rumsfeld tried to run the war as a business instead of as a military, just kicking butt and getting it over with. Yeah, we did not go in like we did in the first war, the Powell doctrine. The first war, 500,000 troops. We went in and it was over, $100. 30 days of bombing and $100 of troops, it was over. It was a different fight in 2003. Afghanistan's a very difficult country. Nation building, all that other stuff. It does feel to me, and I am not in the best position to make this decision as a strategic view, but it does feel to me that we've been in Afghanistan longer than the benefits on the other side. What are we gaining by the continued investment in that country? I would ask some detailed questions about, I know how much it's costing, but I would ask some detailed questions about what is our goal? What is the final outcome that you're working towards, and how are you trying to accomplish it? As an officer for the last 10 years, I have not heard from either President Bush or President Obama, what is victory? What is it? Tell me, and I'll get it for you. I don't know what it is.
They don't know what it is.
Well, and that's a problem, and that's why we're dragging it out. Define victory, let me achieve it, and let me get out of there. It is my feeling. And I am not definitive. I am purposefully not planting a flag in here because this is such a delicate thing. And I would need to have some more information to make the right decision. But I would need to know what are we trying to achieve. And as your congressman, I would ask our president, what is your goal in Afghanistan? Because I've wasted a lot of my life in that country, and I don't think it was a waste. I really don't. I said that wrong. I apologize. But I have taken a lot of my life to achieve something there, and I have no idea what I was working towards. What is it? What was I supposed to be doing while I was there? And let's find out for those folks that are still there. Let's get it done, and let's get it.
I empathize with that. I spent a year in Vietnam wondering why. But, aside from that, my house is now worth half of what it was a couple, 4 or 5 years ago. And it seems to me that the problem has been created more so by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae free-spending. Anybody can get credit. What would you do about Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae?
Yeah, and this is one of those where when you were bottling the glass, you could have maybe saved it 10 years ago when, Bush went to Congress, I think, 17 times saying, stop the madness. And Congress kept thumbing their nose at him, Republican and Democrat. Again, I'll throw both parties under the bus when it's appropriate. Now that we've dropped the glass and it's exploded on the ground, to try to put it back together, we're not going to be able to do it. We are suffering now, and we're going to suffer some more to get through this period. My answer on that is twofold, and I'll start with the tough love. Some people bought houses they shouldn't have.
That's right.
And for those folks that got into homes, and I'll tell you my own story. When I was buying my home in 2000, the loan agent kept trying to get me to do a 5-year adjustable, no documents.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I want a 30-year fixed. I want to own this home. And he kept, we can approve you for more. It's like, I can afford this. And I walked away with my wife going, who in the world would do such a thing? And then I realized, and I apologize if you were one of the ones that did it, but I realized there's people out there doing this. And just whether it was taking on too much risk or whatever, there are some folks that have just bought too much and need to let go and start over. Now there are other folks, and I got this from knocking on doors. This is a great story. A fellow asked me a similar question. He says, I have a job, I got a payment. I can pay a mortgage, but I owe more now than my home is worth. So the bank won't refinance with me, and so I can lower my payment. And then he says, you know how many billions of dollars of my tax dollars have went to bail them out? Why aren't they helping me out? And where there is, and we've tried to put in some of these government programs, and they're just not helping people. It's again the government bureaucracy, whatever, but it's accountability. Where there is a person with an income, where there is a potential for that house to be paid for, we have got to say, banks, we gave you lots of tax dollars, so we have control over those tax dollars. That's your money. And we don't just give it away freely. If we're going to use your tax dollar for something, there needs to be an intention or an intended outcome for it, and it has to have strings attached. We need to say to those banks, you refinance those folks that have a reasonable chance of surviving and keeping this house, and define the reasonable. Somebody does a job, somebody has an income, somebody that refinances. And all the money we have given those banks, absolutely there should be some give to the people. It should be trickling down. Say that word.
I don't think they should have been given any of that money to bail out. Let them
That's
nobody bailed out my.
That's the bottling.
My father when they started businesses.
Yeah, I know, and that's the bottling. And, yeah, and that the grass is broke. It's too late. That money's been spent. I can't go back and change it.
Well, it's true, but when you look at the amount of money that was given to them, that amount of money, if it had been given to every citizen, every homeowner, with the stipulation that that money used to be pay off their homes, you wouldn't have the crash in the housing market.
Terrible. I mean, there was
The
a
banks
lot.
aren't giving that money out.
Yeah, a lot happened. And when
Loans.
we gave that money to the banks, there needed to be a much looser policy for refinancing than there was. And then there needed to be a bright line for those to say, you need to foreclose and you need to move on. What we've done is all these gray areas and leading people on. And I tried to refinance at one point. I've tried to refinance several times because I'm within that 80-20. I owe more than 80 but less than 100. I don't qualify for anything. Really? I'm making my payment every month, I mean, I've got to check 2 jobs. So,
Well, I got the comment that I didn't qualify for this new program that replaces where I owe money. I called them up and I said I want to take advantage of refi. They said, well, you don't qualify through the new program now because your loan, previous loan closed after such and such date.
Yeah. So you get all these weird rules, so it fits so little people.
But then when I went to someone else to refi, what they put me through to refi was absolutely ridiculous. I finally told my agent, if you ask me for one more document, you can throw it, you know where.
So it's gone the other direction.
It's gone the other direction.
And Dodd-Frank has a lot of issues with that.
And it doesn't have anything to do with that I don't have the money to pay the bill. I do. It's just all of this stuff they put you through now
Yeah.
can be mind-boggling for a lot of people.
And here's a place where I don't have a solid, this is what we should do, answer step by step. I would define, if I was on a banking committee, which is not something I'm shooting for, but if I was working on this, I would set up the boundaries or the intent, the place I want to get to. We need to help people that have a reasonable chance of staying in their houses, meaning they have income, they have a house that we can refinance. My house was worth over 900 grand at one point, which is just ridiculous. I mean, I should have sold. Boy, I should have sold. Now,
These guys lost in the home, I lost in the market, you know, when you invest your money and then it grows and then you lose all of the growth
Yeah.
and the principal, so
Yeah.
it's all 45% there.
Well, I learned the hard way about stock games too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I would set up some goals, and I've looked at these programs to refinance myself. There are no goals. You got to clearly define the goals. You got to clearly define the assets you have and the liabilities you have, and then figure out what you can do with the assets you have and accomplish that.
And my question specifically though,
Yeah.
does government have a role in making that happen, or is that should the free market cover it?
At this point, because the government is so meddled into it, the government has to do something about it. To just stop at this point, it would leave it worse than it is right now. We have put so many of your tax dollars into this program that we have to follow through with those tax dollars and make sure they do some good. I would have solved this issue a lot differently going back to the beginning. But now I have this broken glass on the ground that I'm trying to pick up and do something with. At this point, yes, government has something to do because we got to make sure your tax dollars are used in a direction that's going to come up with a positive outcome. And once we solve that, pumping more into it or whatever, that's where I get to some people just need to start over. You know, some people just do. I mean, if I lost my job right now and was not able to pay for my house, I would sell it or try to get out of it and understand that is the way it happens. Thank God that hasn't happened, but I understand. So that's...
Please vote for my husband so it doesn't.
What?
No, I'm kidding. I said, please vote for my husband so it doesn't. That scared me. I'm just,
Just a couple of comments on my question.
Sure.
How the bank got recapitalized, the Federal Reserve printed the money, and then the Federal Reserve took the mortgage-backed securities in exchange for the money. So all we did, the debt bond was still out there, it's just held by the Federal Reserve at this point, rather than the bank. So the problem's still there, just in another vehicle. But anyway, here's one of my questions. I carry a Constitution around with me all the time. I have it with me right now. And I also keep Federalist papers close at hand to where I sit in my chair at night. And I noticed that you said you would replace Obamacare, but since I've read the Federalist papers end to end, the Constitution 1,000 times, I don't know where your authorization is in the Constitution to replace it with anything. Well, if you say it's a Commerce Clause, I'd like to talk with you about that side.
Yeah, when you open it up to interstate competition, now it becomes Commerce Clause. And there needs to be some safeguards put in place. Because of Congressman Jeremy's concern that there would be scam insurances, you bet we need to regulate an industry that crosses state lines, insurance being one of them, to make sure that people aren't being scammed.
My question was, where in the Constitution is it authorized to replace it at the federal level?
Oh, well, in terms of when you open it up to cross state lines, I would differentiate to, well, and maybe general welfare in this case too, making sure that we weren't being
The general welfare, the founders, when they wrote the Constitution, they would make generalized statements like the general welfare, that doesn't have anything to do with the meaning of the Constitution. Then they get specific with their writings. They make these general statements, And when you read the Federalist Papers, you know that general welfare clause was simply just a preface before they.
Before the state.
Yeah,
You're right.
exactly.
You're right.
So
So
there is.
we have individual responsibility for our own healthcare,
That's
actually.
right. It's a
I
states'
think
rights
it's
issue.
Yeah.
It's like the states and the people. Like Romney Care, I don't have a problem with Romney Care because it was all, it's legal for the state of Massachusetts to do that. It's not legal for the federal government to do that.
And don't get me wrong, I do not want to see some sort of replacement of Obamacare that the government is providing healthcare
Good.
or providing healthcare insurance.
Yeah.
And that would be a replacement. The replacement would be tort reform, I would see, is in there. You know, the replacement would be if you are insured and, you know, I just talked to somebody who both mother and father had $90,000 a year jobs, making $108 grand a year. They had insurance. She got pregnant, and the child was born prematurely by quite a bit and went to intensive care, and it was very expensive, and the insurance company dropped that. And this is a story I heard, you know, it's secondhand. And that's something that doesn't seem right to me. You got insurance, and now they're dropping you once you start using the insurance. That doesn't seem right. Those are the kind of things I see in a replacement for the bill.
Are you familiar with the Laffer curve?
Yes.
Okay.
That-
If you take your freedom curve and you rotate a quarter of a turn and put tax rate
Yep.
where freedom is and tax dollars generated where the size of government is, and how it's important to know the Laffer curve is if you're going to have people, and they do this all the time, the whole United States has had tax rates as high as 90% at the increment, but what they don't understand is the United States was an island where the politicians could do that to the people. Now, you've got a world economy where if you try to tax greater than your competitors are, capital, jobs are simply going to go to that better environment. And that's what's happening to us right now. We're number one in taxes,
Regulations.
regulations.
Yeah. That's my three-legged monster that chases jobs overseas with kills jobs. So you bet. I get it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hold on with you because Heather, you told me you had some questions, so I'm gonna call on you. You had some half a hand raised.
All right. Well, it kind of piggybacks on something that's already been mentioned about how you're going to go to Congress and not get sucked in, because everyone talks about getting stuff done once they get in office, but I fear that the newly elected officials, that they're really unprepared for the reality of the bureaucracy that's going on and the control and the power that they wield. And the aristocracy that seemingly has this unchecked power and this private money and wealth and power that control. And I don't know how you're going to avoid the game, to stay out of the game, to really get something done, because they'll just cut you off and you won't be able to be productive. I fear.
Yeah, and what you're saying is something I deal with in the Air Force. You know, I was in my boss's office 2 days ago. We have this rule, and it's bureaucracy is what I'm trying to explain to you about how to deal with this bureaucracy. We have this rule that we get our pilots back from training and they're being paid for full time by a certain color of money. We call it RP, reserve money. Well, somebody up the stream decided that that money should not be used for performing the mission of the war downrange, meaning flying from Europe into Afghanistan. Somebody in the bureaucracy. Well, when I get a pilot back from training, I'm trying to get them to become an aircraft commander or in charge of a mission, and they're in charge of the crew and the airplane and go out to do whatever mission is out there. So in that training time, I need to get them downrange so they can practice that mission. So when I certify them as an aircraft commander, they have my full faith and trust to go out and fly around the world wherever they need to go. So I don't really care what color money it is. I care about my aircraft commander's capabilities. And so I'm in my boss's office the other day explaining the issue. Fortunately, I have a great boss that is completely understanding and on my page with that. And it's me beating my head against the wall at this point, doing what I can to try to change this. Now I've upped the level, and in the military it's a lot easier than in peers, because now my boss has it, and he's fighting with me. But I certainly have convinced him of the rightness of my side of the argument, and he's taking it up. Now in Congress, I expect to have some of those things, some of those same issues, and I'm prepared for it. I know I'll beat my head against the wall, and Like I said, you win some, you lose some. When you're in the beginning, you lose more than you win. But I am committed to continuing to fight. I'm committed to holding on to it and seeing it through. And as I raise up through the ranks, so to speak, assuming that I'm doing a good job for you and you keep putting me back in. If I was my boss in my boss's position, I'd have a better chance of fixing that problem. If I was in his position, I'd have a better chance. As I am in Congress fighting these battles, learning how to work through the system, I'll keep learning how to have a better chance of fixing these, running them to the ground. And one of the things I have learned how to do in the Air Force is learn new jobs very well and very quickly. And when I get to Congress and I see this bureaucratic mess, I'll run it to ground, figure out where the loggerhead is, and then figure out how to get through it. Now, I'm up here, I've got just as much ability to fix these things as anybody else. I got to get a majority, I got to work on it, but now that's up to me. I'm not a lieutenant colonel asking a colonel to do something for me. I'm a congressman trying to get a majority to pass a bill to fix that with a bunch of my peers. And that's the fight I will wage. And I understand it is getting majorities together to pass bills
But they
to
pass
fix those
stuff
problems.
on all the bills, and it's all a compromise, and it's so frustrating for us citizens to sit there and go, and then you vote against something that we put you in office to vote, but it's because of what they tack on the end, and nobody sees that, and they use it against you,
Yeah.
and then they defeat you. I mean, it seems like
Well, that's
so
where
frustrating.
you and I keep that dialogue going. Oh, another thing, I forgot all about it. All right. On my website, my congressional website, not my campaign website, my congressional website, will be the bills that come through Congress. And it will be a description of the bill, and it'll be a yes or no or an I don't know column. And there'll be a yes and why I'm voting for it. There'll be a no and why I'm saying no. Or there'll be an I don't know because I haven't read it yet, or I haven't got to it yet, or I need some input, or I'm asking you, what do you think? And that way we'll keep in touch, and you'll know why I'm voting yes or no. And if they try to do that stuff to me again, I'm going to fight for what I believe in. And I'm going to trust you, my constituents, to approve or disapprove. And it is a burden of mine to make sure I'm communicating with you so you know what I'm doing. And then whatever they do, we'll have to deal with it. You know, I'm dealing with it right now when I'm running as this campaign with the establishment candidate out there. You know, I already have that kind of setup, and it doesn't bother me. I keep going forward. I don't mind grinding away to get to where I want to go. Spent a 22-year career in the Air Force, and I am still doing it. And without any less vim or vigor, and I'm a lot smarter and more effective now than I was before. And I'll do the same in Congress. I do not expect to change the world in the first 3 months I'm there. I will keep grinding away and keep working towards these things that we're talking about and making progress as we go. And I do want to see our budget balanced in 5 years. That's one thing I want to work on and bring forward. That's the timeline I'll give myself. It'll probably take me a year or two to get that going, but that's what I want to see. So, yeah. Does that help? Give you, I am not Pollyanna, but I am hardworking, and I am willing. Yeah, and I am willing to fight and work hard and do the grunt work to get there. So you were next.
Yeah, there are a few things I want to talk about. My biggest one is when we elect you to go to Congress, I'm not electing, I understand your position and all, but it's not to pass legislation. I think they pass too much legislation. There's pages and pages and pages. There are no things. I want you to go to Congress, and I want you to say, we want accountability. We're going to go back through all these damn laws that we've passed for the last 200 years or whatever, and we're going to see which ones work, which ones don't. We're pulling funding to some. I'm a retired elementary teacher, 36 years experience, and then I just subbed for the last 7 years or whatever. I'm still subbing. But anyway, I don't want you to pass any new stuff, because all new stuff means there's no money to spend anyway. You don't have any money, so you can't just put new laws that you got to have new people who enforce them, and this is just growing bureaucracy. I don't want to grow bureaucracy. I want the darn thing to shrink. I want, like a big balloon. Put a bullet in it, shrink that darn thing down to a break. So keep that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should have to go through all these laws that are there and put them in English so that the average sixth grader can understand them. I'm tired of this darn lawyers writing this stuff that lawyers have. I'm tired. The lawyer's not on me. God gave me my freedom, my rights, and I don't want a lawyer interpreting all this stuff for me. I don't like lawyer-written laws, and that's all they are. Nobody understands this stuff. So get rid of the legislation that's there. I want to get it down to 10% of Reduce it by 90%. Spend all your years reducing those damn laws.
Yeah, two points you made. One, I'll do the easy one first. I'm not a lawyer. I'm that mathematician pilot, right? Talk plainly. I don't think I'm using any big words tonight, am I?
No.
So anything I write, you're gonna be able to understand. Yeah, I'll probably have some lawyer look it over and make sure I'm not screwing something up. But it's gonna be plain language. And when I have that thing on my website, you know, it's gonna be my job to understand all that stuff or get a hold of somebody that can explain it to me and that I
Well,
trust.
they don't even understand.
Right.
I mean, even when you guys, when they read it, they don't understand.
Yeah,
When
and
they expect us to follow all the rules.
well, and then when those bills are put on my website, it's going to be in plain language, so we understand it together. So that's the easy one. Now, on the other side, which you're talking about reducing, that's exactly what I'm talking about in balancing budget. We have to pass budgets. I mean, the Senate has failed in their job for 3 years to pass a budget.
That's
They
right.
have failed to do their job.
It's 3 years.
Yeah, so,
But the president's supposed to submit it though, and he just.
yeah, well, all appropriations come from Congress, so we have to pass a budget. And in those budgets, I want to see the cutting, you know, I'm talking about cutting. Now, on the other side, what I talked about on the regulations, that's what I want to go through and streamline and start pulling out those
Not
regulations.
just
Right?
regulations, but the legislation too, all these other laws that have been on, you know.
Yeah, let's repeal the 2,700 page Obamacare, let's repeal the 2,000 plus page Dodd-Frank bill. Let's start there.
20,000 IRS code.
Yeah, the IRS code is, yeah, we gotta reduce that. A lot of things.
Taxes, their tax or something.
I'm a fair tax guy, although I would support a flat tax. And anybody, did I lose anybody on that one?
Yeah, what's the exact difference? Because I got-
Flat tax is, we all pay the same rate. It's
Yeah.
progressive, because if you make 100 grand and pay 20%, you pay 20 grand in taxes. If you make $1 million, you pay 200,000. So flat tax is everybody pays the
But
same.
I want everybody paying, I don't want half of Americans not paying taxes, that's not right either.
Well, and
In
that
this
is,
year, you
The
pay.
53 and the 47, she's talking
I want
about.
them paying.
yeah, well, and that is,
Everybody pays.
that's one reason why I'm for the fair tax. And the
Yeah.
fair tax is a national sales tax. It replaces every tax out there, income, social security, dividend.
What goes to the
capital
federal, and
gains.
what goes to the state on the national?
I don't care about state, and that's up to them. Right now, we're paying about 8% in California. That's their deal.
All right, a national sales tax.
National sales tax, and I've used this number a few times. I think our federal government should be about cost, about 17% of GDP.
No. Oh.
10, that'd be nice, 10 would be nice, but
10%.
we're talking, we're well over 25% right now. We're way up there, so going down to 17 is a huge cut.
That served us historically well too.
Yes, and I've done research, and that's where I'm coming from. Now, I would add a 3% on top of that to pay off the debt, and that 3% will go, we balance the budget at 17% and use the 3% to pay off the debt, and that's where I get about a 30-year payout. But anyways,
Yeah, we gotta pay off that debt.
that's where we're going, and so.
Those guys that passed it on, kind of, they should have to pay a whole bunch of it.
Well, I don't-
Heard it.
It's bad enough my
So,
kids,
I agree.
it's bad enough my kids are gonna have to buy a house for me, because we didn't, you know, that 30-year mortgage that I wanna pay off. It's bad enough they gotta buy my house. It's gonna be even worse if my grandkids are doing it, so we can at least get a good start. Sir?
I just wanted to cap on something she said, then ask you a question. John Conyers, when the Obamacare debate was going on, he said, I always get irritated by my fellow congressmen who ask me, have you read the bill? Have you read the bill? And then he went on to say, it would take, if you have 2 days and 2 lawyers, then maybe you can read the bill. So
Yeah.
it was just a slap. But anyway, when I was running for office in the fall of 2010 for school board, flying the fiscal conservative mantra, there was a couple of people that asked me, hey, you're one of those evil conservatives. I said, what do you mean? Well, you would probably take away a woman's right to choose. Remember, we're in California, and we're somewhat socially moderate. And I said, well, I don't think those issues are going to come before the school board, but if you really want to know where I stand, I'm pro-adoption. That's a solution.
Yes.
I just don't stake out an ideological position. I'm going to defend that to the death. But I'm pro-adoption, which ultimately makes me pro-life, but I offer a solution rather than just staking out a position. So I wanted to just, maybe that's some wisdom for you in your travels. That I think that's what cost Carly Fiorina the election here. She didn't have that solution. She was staunchly pro-life, and she just made herself you know, that's kind of against the grain of Californians overall, but she didn't offer a solution on pro-adoption.
Yeah, I like.
She would have won.
I
if she
absolutely
would have
love what
had
you
that.
just said. Absolutely love what you just said. It's great. I'm gonna use it, if you don't mind.
You have my consent.
Thank you. Who else was asking questions? Did you have one?
Is a follow-up to something she was saying,